This is the second video in this series on how to study the Bible, and in this video I'll give you a rundown of the process that we're going to look at. And that rundown has 6 parts. I'll state up front that these videos are intended to be short for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because you may be like me and have a short attention span. Another reason would be for download times if you want to download the videos. So each one of these steps may not equal one video. There may be some of the steps that take more than one video, but the videos are intended to be short, so you don't have to watch a whole video, and you can focus in on certain areas that you may want to. But this is the basic rundown of the steps of better understanding a passage of the Bible. First would be to make sure that you have a bird's eye view of the book as a whole. The second would be to take out your magnifying glass, using that as a metaphor to look at the text in significant detail. A third step would be to break the passage down. The fourth step we'll look at, I called Word Up, would be to study individual words within the passage, and then to look at the backgrounds and to make connections. Now, when I say get a bird's eye view of a passage, again, what I'm talking about here is when you're looking at a particular text, make sure that you have an overview of a book as a whole. For instance, if you're studying Genesis 1, it's good to understand Genesis 1 in the light of the whole of the book of Genesis, or at least in the light of the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis, so that you're understanding the parts in light of the whole. The second step here of taking out our magnifying glass, we're going to look at how to compare different translations, and how when we compare different translations of a biblical text, it can reveal some things to us about the text, whether or not there might be differences in manuscripts, whether or not there might be words in those texts that are difficult to translate. So the first step, getting a bird's eye view of the passage. The second step, taking out our magnifying glass and comparing different translations of the passage that we're trying to study. The third step of breaking the passage down would simply be outlining. And outlining is something that many of us have learned from the time that we were in grade school, and it may not be a whole lot of fun, but it is something that can help us to understand what the main points of a particular passage are, and to make sure that we're trying to understand the main points and not focus on details that may not be of the greatest amount of significance. The fourth step of doing word study may be one of the more difficult steps here, but I've included it anyway because I think that most people can do it with a little bit of direction. And there would be 2 aspects of that, looking at some of the dictionary definitions of a word in the original, well, I shouldn't maybe not say original language is maybe not the best thing, but or best way to phrase that, but in the Greek and the Hebrew of the New Testament and the Old Testament. Looking at the backgrounds, we'll be talking about looking at the historical background and also the cultural background, that some of the things that we don't understand is just because the biblical books were written in a different time and a different part of the world, and there are just things that we won't understand. The final step would be to make connections, and here I'm talking specifically about theological connections, and we'll talk about why that's important. But one of the main things up front is that you may be reading and interpreting a biblical passage that is actually read and interpreted within the Bible itself. So there may be people who have interpreted that passage before you long ago, who maybe understood the language a little bit better, maybe understood the culture a little bit better. So that's a basic rundown. I'll teach you in this set of videos how to get an overview of a biblical book so that you can understand the parts in light of the whole, teach you how to take out the magnifying glass and compare translations, teach you how to outline and do word study, and then how to study the historical background and make some of the connections in the text that maybe have been made by people before us.